And we are live Sunday night with those guys.
Sunday nights with those guys. Episode live stream number 42 tonight. Well, first, welcome to Sunday nights with those guys. Happy holidays if you celebrate them or not. Happy day anyway. And on the panel, hold on, I have to mute the chat. My bad. I'm sorry. On the panel, we have Ryan Latourette. I said it wrong again. Ryan, please help me out here.
Ryan Latourette.
Latourette. Ryan Latourette. I think I got it now.
All right.
Anyway, what's up, Jay Santiago? Tonight, Ryan Latourette is here because he's a drone advocate for us as hobbyists, professional drone pilots, etc. The problem is we need about 50 more of him to be in each and every of the other states, to make this thing work. So you want to introduce yourself, man? Go ahead, because it's still early. People are still popping in.
All right. Well, yep. So my name is Ryan Latourette, and I've been flying drones for quite a while. My first drone was the DJI Phantom 1. So I've been doing this quite a bit of years.
Wow.
I actually intended, when I bought the drone, I thought, hey, I got a family farm that's being sold. I want to take pictures of it. I can buy this drone for dirt nothing, take pictures and sell it off rather than have a helicopter or whatever come out. I never did take pictures of the family farm, and I never did sell the drone. So I just got hooked and kept on with it. But I do advocacy for drones across the nation.
Hey, Paul.
I tend to try to speak at different events and make sure that people understand the importance of having aviation expertise in drones, where manned airplane pilots need to know all things about drones because we need to integrate with them, and we need to know about the airspace that we're integrating with manned aircraft.
Okay.
Beyond that, we do lawsuits and advocacy at the state level houses, legislatures.
Well, we're all of that to you guys who are watching the live stream over. Hopefully by the end of the live stream, you'll understand all of that he just mentioned, because I know when I talk to some people about drones, and I'm sure you do it, Herman, and you too, Paul, when you talk about drones, to them, you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wow, 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 like that. But what's up, Ray? How are you? I'm going to send you an invite. It's a select invite tonight on the panel. Give me a second, Ray. But Paul, what's good? How are you, brother?
And
Paul, Ryan, Paul.
Both of you guys are from the good old state of Michigan.
Yes, he's from your home state. So you guys should definitely get together and hook up, or at least discuss drones, because Ryan, from what I found out, is quite detailed in not only drone knowledge, but drone advocacy in a general. And there are too many states in the United States that don't have any type of drone advocates, etc. Someone help while I'm sending out invites.
Well, I said, you said you were in Michigan, we were talking before, and you had mentioned, we were talking off, before the show started and what got this all started. And, what I wanted you to do was, what led to the whole thing of this snowballing into this effect?
Sure.
And I don't think anybody else knows.
As I said, I've been doing drones for quite some time. And one of the things that happened to me personally is I went out to various cities in my local area. So East Lansing, I'm a Spartan. So yay, go state. I went out to East Lansing and flew out there. I went up to DeWitt, which is just north of Lansing, and flew there. And both of those communities decided, hey, we are close enough to a Class C airport that we do not want drones. And so they put in regulations or ordinance that prohibited drones, despite me going out there and saying, hey guys, wait a minute. You can't do this. You do not have the authority to regulate airspace. Only the FAA has that authority. That didn't work. They still put in their regulations. So we turned and went to the state legislature. And we said to the state, look, we know that every single locality is going to be standing up their own drone ordinance unless you do something. And if you don't do something, and we have all these ordinances, we're going to create this patchwork of legislation where nobody's going to know when they can fly, where they can fly, how long they can fly, do they need a permit? And that poses a serious challenge, not just to drone operators, but to the safety of the NAS.
Curtis invites said, can I give the perfect example, Ryan?
Absolutely.
You're in the state of New York. If you try to fly in New York, you go to 311. If you call 311, the city, and ask, where can I fly a drone in New York? You've met with a message that says, if you see a drone or someone flying a drone in New York, call the police.
Yep.
And then in the same sense, they tell you, in the same paragraph, they tell you there are only 5 places you can fly in New York. And those are AMA fields.
Right.
Now, also, their New York City Department of Parks is telling people that you cannot fly in the city park anymore. And if you do, we can confiscate your drones and give you a hefty fine. And this has just happened over the last year or two. But the point I'm getting to is there are too many places in the United States that are saying you can buy drones in our state. You can fly them in certain places, but you can't fly them here. You can. I mean, they're talking with a split tongue.
Yeah.
If I can say. Hey, what's up, Curtis? How are you?
What's going on, guys? Hey, Ryan. We've talked online quite a few times.
Indeed. How are you?
I'm doing very, very good. Glad to meet you in person. So
hey, above and beyond drones. Well, the topic of tonight it's a generalized topic, but it has to do with drone. Ryan being a big drone advocate for dronies, etc. But I personally, after tonight, want to have some kind of information. Ryan, what are the numbers for states that are advocating for drones and states that are not?
Yeah, so currently there are 17 total states that have passed a preemption clause. And by preemption, what that says is they've passed something that says a local subdivision, so think township, county, city, cannot create or enforce their own drone ordinances. So Michigan was one of the first to do that, and there are 16 other states besides the state of Michigan that have that type of preemption language. So we've got 33 more to go. I know that Colorado is actually one. Vic Moss just talked with me the other day. He's working on that in Colorado right now. Hopefully they'll get that bill going through that house. And then with our lawsuit, once we get the decision on that, we suspect that each of the 33 states is going to pay attention to that decision and go, you know what, we do need this in our state, and we'll get that rolling out through those remaining 33.
Well, see, my objective tonight is to get information from you personally on how those guys or anyone else here in New York that wants to help us do this advocate for the state of New York and be on that list. I don't know if you have links or stuff. Maybe we can get that information later, but there's a lot of stuff with phone numbers and people that need to be contacted that I feel, especially in the state of New York, when it comes to flying drones, if it was illegal to fly drones, I'm going to tell you in New York, there are so many people flying right now in 40-mile-per-hour winds and 20-mile-per-hour winds and 10-mile-per-hour winds each day that I can guarantee at least 50 to 100 people would be arrested. And this is only in the 5 boroughs of Manhattan.
The addiction to fly a drone is strong.
Yes, it is.
What happened?
I said the addiction to fly a drone is strong.
Yes, especially in New York. Okay, you have one of the brightest cities in New York. I mean, in the States or on the Northeast coast. And it's really, really hard. Andrew, I need to get you an invite. Paul, can you get Andrew in here? I would appreciate that. He's from Pusa Studios, and he does a lot of, he's what you would call a YouTube advocator. But Andrew, we can't go squirrel tonight. we have to stay a little focused. We can joke around.
I
but there's
kind
a
of know
lot
Ryan. Ryan will follow right along. It's okay.
I know,
Ryan's got a good sense of humor, so that's
we
not an
had
issue.
Ryan in here about 10 minutes before the live stream. I told him you guys go squirrel. So, and he just chuckled. So,
Dolores, let me bring you back around to exactly what you wanted to do, is talk about New York. And I'll talk specifically here about New York City.
Please
right?
do that while we get, please do that while we
Okay.
get Pusa Studios in here.
So New York City, what happened 70 plus years ago is that the city decided, hey, we have a lot of wealth going on in the city, obviously, right? And all these skyscrapers are going up, and every millionaire is thinking, oh, I've got my own helicopter, so I'm going to have my own helipad right atop my skyscraper. Well, the city was smart at that point, and they said, you know what? We need to find some way to limit this. And so they wrote what was called the Avigation Law or Avigation Ordinance that was prohibitive of such operations. And they wrote it such that they were in mind that it would cut down on all this helicopter traffic and creation of these helipads atop the skyscrapers. But what they didn't know is that here 70 years later or 60 years later, we'd start having unmanned aerial vehicles. And the language of that Avigation Law is such that it actually is prohibitive of UAS in New York City. So that's where everybody's saying, hey, you can't fly in New York City, except for these particular AMA parks where it's been allowed.
Right.
So now we're at a point where we've said, this is wrong. Yes, you still can have your Avigation ordinance of some sort, because obviously you don't want, 10,000 helicopter pads atop different skyscrapers, but you need to ease that restriction or change the language in such a way that you are not prohibiting UAS from flight in the city. So an initiative has gotten started to gather some information. One of those pieces of information that was being looked for was how many people have actually asked for a permit via that Avigation ordinance to allow themselves to fly and had it either denied or approved. So what we came through with the NYC PD is that no permit had actually ever been approved. We don't know the numbers yet as to how many people applied, but we do have the numbers from the PD that said they have not approved a single one. So that's the first step. The next step is to say, how many people have actually been charged with a crime for flying in the city?
In New York metropolitan area.
Correct. Yes. And we do know of at least one person. I personally know that Micah Burnside, he was charged with a crime, issued a ticket, a citation, a money ticket. They did not pursue that ticket in the court system.
Okay, can I ask you one question?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the tourist that this year in 2019, he's a drone pilot. He came here from Europe. I don't know
Swiss
exactly
guy.
where you're familiar with him?
Yep.
And he crashed into the building, 55th story, and it was on the weekend. Monday morning, he went in to go apologize and pay for the window and collect his drone. And they said, sure, come on upstairs. And when he went upstairs, they arrested him. That's the gentleman you're talking about.
No.
but you are familiar with that story.
Yes, but that he was not arrested for flying in New York. He was arrested for property damage.
Yes.
So they had a way to get around it a little bit, right?
Well, I have a question for you. I don't know how familiar you are with architecture and engineering and stuff, but skyscrapers in New York are built to withstand a certain wind, pressure, obstacles, objects hitting them. How fast do you think this guy was going that he went through a storm window into the office?
Honestly, as much as we think of a skyscraper being built well to withstand forces, because of the way that the drones are hitting in especially in its critical center for glass, there is a good chance that it has broken. And we've seen this. Cleveland had one atop one of their towers where the drone shattered the window. It's literally where the drone hits on the glass as the weak point of that glass.
Okay, but not to diverse from the subject. The gentleman you were talking about, whatever happened to that case, and you other guys on the panel could help out a little here, with questions as well as in the chat.
We're trying not to squirrel.
I know, I'm going bad, Curtis, bad.
When you're asking a question over the man speaking, you're over questioning.
I know. I'm sorry, Ryan.
No problem.
We do that a lot here.
Yeah, I can tell you, I know the name of the person. It was Paolo Prosetti. He was the Swiss tourist that crashed into the building. I do not have information as to what inevitably resulted, whether he was charged and that charge went all the way through. But that's his name. Maybe we can Google, find out, right?
Well, I'd like to ask you this, because we've always, the FAA has always talked about education. At what point are they going to stop with the education? Because we have people here that fly in New York, and the majority of the pilots here in New York are not flying up and down Manhattan in the densely populated part of the city. Only when we have guys like a tourist or someone hot shot guy out there, there's a few guys you've seen, some of them in some of these Facebook groups, they do it. At what point do we start with the education and just single these guys out alone? Because even when you mentioned about the whole rooftop thing with the heliports, how New York City ushers in things is that they have to come up with something to scare someone first. And once you scare everybody,
I think that's generally government in general.
Right. Well, I mean, it happens here, so much that with that, how they ushered in what he's talking about was the helicopter that crashed at the Pan Am building right above Park Avenue. After that crash, there was no more rooftop heliports in New York City.
We have a similar situation here in Seattle. About two, maybe 3 years ago, the Como News helicopter early in the morning before rush hour, and that was a blessing in disguise, actually. I think the situation was the gentleman had a heart attack, whatever the case may be. He crashed. Mm-hmm. The city of Seattle started looking at licensing and allowing helicopters in the city, and I think smartly enough, the news organizations, the three that are here, decided, hey, Bowling Field is just right down the street. We're just going to put our helicopters there. There's no sense in having them take off. They can pick up reporters wherever they need, stuff like that. The reason of flying out of the city is just kind of nonsensical. But since then, the city of Seattle has initiated a lot of ordinances as far as where you can and can't take off, city parks, city property, etc. But that doesn't stop you from taking off from a paid parking lot or something like that. It's very, very negative up here right now in Washington State as far as what they are allowing us to do as either a 107 pilot or a hobby pilot.
Right.
If you want to go to a state park, you have to give them a 3 months notice. It's $107, and they do an environmental study. I mean, there's a whole list of just utter crap that they want you to jump through just to fly at a state park.
Well, see, it's similar here in New York. You have the 5 boroughs, and then you have Long Island, where you have Martha's Vineyards and all of those places like that. But each individual town has their own laws pertaining to drones, meaning if you want to fly in our town, you have to pay for a permit, and it can only be on this day during this time. And if it rains, you have to reapply and pay the same fee. And it varies from town to town to town. How is it over in Michigan, Ryan? Or is it different? I mean,
yeah, so
it seems to be spreading like a virus.
With Michigan, we're fortunate that we do have that preemption clause in there that disallows any of the localities from creating or enforcing their own drone ordinances. So the only place that we now had trouble is Genesee County, and that's the county that we are suing, and we expect a decision probably late this next week that we'll have that in. So I'm thinking before Christmas, and we'll be good to go.
Okay. I'm still waiting for Drone Evolution to get his camera on. I don't know if he's having problems or you guys still see that box there or what, but
That's
while it's early, I'd
interesting.
like to get in a quick drop. We do something, we call it, well, we do a drop. We usually say Sunday nights with those guys is sponsored by, hesitate for half a second and go, those guys. So while you're here, Ryan, and I need you to type in the chat room because that's the only way you can get a blue wrench on our live stream.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people here. Wait, how come Matt doesn't have a blue wrench? And he's been on the panel. There we go. That's done, Matt. You're covered. But getting back to what I was saying, we need to do a drop. So if you can type in the chat and I can give you your blue wrench, we can do this drop really early. Now, Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew is not a drone advocate, but Andrew is more of like a YouTube advocate. And it's been rumored that Andrew may be working for YouTube. And that's why he knows so much about them. And he's able to get kicked off air and put back on in 24 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening there, but we're going to talk one day, Andrew. That's a
Hey, Ryan, we were talking about.
Go ahead, Paul.
Type in the chat on YouTube is what we're talking about.
Oh,
Hey, Plummet. Yes.
I got to go out to YouTube, huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
And if I'm kissing YouTube's butt, I'm really not doing a good job of it if I'm working there. I really got to step up my game because they're not fond of me. So, yeah.
Well, I've noticed when you come over here, Andrew, the bandwidth is clean. We don't have any distortion or anything. So I'm like, I want to hang with you.
I don't think that has anything to do with YouTube. That has to do with your local internet provider.
It was.
I'm just playing around. I'm just playing around indirectly. What's up, Plummet? What's up, everybody in the chat? I'm sorry if I have not acknowledged you, but I want to talk about drone advocacy, and especially I mentioned. Yes, Paul. I'm sorry.
You had a squirrel moment, but because you were going to do a drop, and now you're going to talk about.
I'm working back to it. Okay. Well, like I said, Ryan, we usually go Sunday nights with those guys. It's sponsored by, and then we go those guys. Okay, so I'd like to get a drop with you one day. I guess I'll do a collaboration or whatever. But let's get a drop in now. You guys ready?
Ready.
All right. Sunday nights with those guys is sponsored by
those guys.
Okay.
All right,
I appreciate it. It was a little weak, but next time.
Well, the other thing I was going to add real quick was in the Seattle metro area, strangely enough, our worst enemy is not the city right now. It is the motion picture industry that wants to grab hold of the licensing of drone operations inside the city. That's okay for 107 pilots, but for hobby pilots, it's going to kind of suck. I just wanted to add that in there real quick. That's not one that I was not expecting to have some opposition to.
What's up, Ray? Well, my number one question is, Ryan, and this would apply to anyone who's watching a live stream. How do we, those guys, and anyone affiliated with us, not affiliated with us, someone who may watch this video, get information on how to become a drone advocate in their state? Because New York drone rules are effed up. You know that. They're effed up in other states, but New York got it real bad. But because this summer I had I'm 6'3". I'm 6'3" at that time, 280 pounds. I'm a little less. And I had a Parks Department person that was like 5'7", 5'8", tell me they're supposed to confiscate my drone. And the guy that was next to me, Big Matt's in the chat, he's bigger than me. He's 6'5". And we looked at each other and help us here. We don't want little people trying to take our drones from us or people trying to take our drones. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yep. So I think the first thing that has to be considered is that anytime that you are engaged with somebody that needs to know something about drones, that you are the most educated person in that conversation about UAS.
Okay. Hold on. But this individual went on to tell us that there's no flying drones from here, and we actually since when we've been flying from here for 2 years now. okay, it's a new rule. We didn't ask him. We were complying with him. We wanted to hear what this individual was saying. But he went on to say, because you guys are basically nice and you're talking with me, I'm technically supposed to take your drones. Now, there were about 15 of us out there. There's one guy, he's supposed to take our drones and issue us all summonses, but he's just going to give us a warning. And he also went on to tell us where we could contact people to fly in that area to get a permit. But someone else may not have handled the situation so nicely. So what do you do?
Well, again, so I'm thinking that every time that you're in those situations, you've been approached by a police officer, you've been approached by a member of the public, elected official, you're the one that has the most education about drones. So the first thing is to try to educate and deflect the concern that they might have. One of the ways that I like to do this is I'm going to first invite them over. Hey, you want to look at my screen and take a look and see, make sure that I'm not spying on anybody. I'm not invading anybody's privacy. That gives them that idea that, oh yeah, these things aren't that harmful. The other is I'm going to have a binder of paperwork with me that I can be able to share with them. Hey, here are the actual regulations that I have to fly to that are federal regulations. And then I can explain federal
But
takes over from state. Yeah.
But this gentleman was New York City Department of Parks employee, marshal, sheriff, or whatever. And we explained to him that we were all registered drone pilots. And he went on to say, well, there's no drone flying from here. Now, my issue is we knew how to handle that situation, but for the average drone pilot that may not know as much pertaining to drone laws, they may have a problem. Or someone having a bad day. You tell someone you're going to take something from them. People don't like to hear that.
Lawrence, isn't that up like anything else? Like then it's up to the user at that point to educate themselves. And by the way, Ryan, it's nice to meet you. I like what you were saying right there about bringing your binder. Proof is everything. And if you're able to show somebody right in the spot and list to it, it's very hard for people to try and pull a fast one on you if you can show some knowledge on something.
And that's the key is if you've got some paperwork that says, hey, here's exactly what this ordinance is for, or this regulation. And
he did not have that.
Well,
he did not have that, but he did have information. We were flying on an island, and he did have information of where we could go and a website, and he gave us a phone number and someone to speak to ask for a permit. Now, what he was saying was if we were going to fly in that island as a group, I think if it was 2 or 3 people, he might not have went in this direction. But as a group of 15 to 18 guys out there flying, he was saying you were supposed to have this area roped off and have a permit to do this.
Special permit, sure.
Right, I can understand it, but you know what I think is going to have to happen here in the city? People are going to have to educate themselves like Andrew was saying, and keep as much of your documentations that you can keep visible, like your registration and stuff like that. Make sure your drones, your registration is printed on your drone as well, and access to your registration card, your ID and stuff like that, because you're gonna have to keep moving a little bit until everyone is educated on this, because you can't keep pushing back, because they'll use, and you've seen this, they'll find some other reason to charge you. Like he said, the guy was charged with the destruction of property, not for flying his drone in the city, but even though he's not supposed to, they didn't charge him with that. They charged him with the property damage.
Yeah, and I think that's the second point, is that your interaction shouldn't just be limited to the interaction at the time, but now that he's given you some information about who to contact, how to go about getting access, those are now the people that you need to reach out to say, hey, we had this situation. We definitely were legal. Here's all the detail behind that. Maybe you can now educate your officers. And I want to give an example from my personal experience that I had. I live right close to the Michigan State Capitol. So one of the first places that I wanted a shot of was, of course, the Michigan State Capitol. It's a beautiful building. So I made the contact with the Michigan State Police who control the property there. And I said, can I fly? And they said, absolutely not. well, why not? Let me show you what says I can. And as we went through that, they were like, yeah, okay, you can do that. And so I would go and visit the Capitol grounds and fly there quite often. And it became so second nature that I would have the state police right there with me. I would sometimes even give them the controls and be over their shoulder as they flew my drones such that they could get a shot of the Capitol building. Came about a year later, and I was flying just outside the Capitol grounds, and the Lansing City Police Department is right across the street. Immediately, this rookie cop comes out running over. Get that thing down. You can't fly here. I roll my eyes. Yes, I can. I'll show you all the paperwork. I'll be happy to land this. We can talk through this. Oh, that did not satisfy him. That only escalated his anger. Get it down now. Fine, I'm bringing it down. But I wasn't doing it fast enough for him, so he finally says, I'm going to call the Michigan State Police. You do that, please. You do that. So he gets on the horn. He gets the Michigan State Police. They come rolling. I mean, this car's rolling right down Capitol Avenue the wrong way. It's a one-way street. They're coming down the wrong way, screeching to a halt. This guy over in the corner, he's looking at me like, yeah, you're in for it now, buddy. The door opens, out jumps the Michigan State police officer. Hey, Ryan, you're here. I haven't seen you in a while. Do I get to fly tonight? Right? This rookie officer, tail between his legs, knew he was in trouble at that point. And I got to sit there as the educator. I was the teacher listening to my student teach another student why it was that I could fly there. Right. And so you can have those conversations ahead of time, right? Or after you've had an incident, go in to talk to the police, go in to talk to the officials and say, hey, we want to come to terms with this. Let's make sure that this doesn't happen again because this is illegal activity. And usually they're going to help you out.
Okay, well, I understand that part. It's all about how you present yourself and how knowledgeable you are. But what's the situation with the actual court case in Michigan that you guys are advocating for? Because
absolutely,
that's very crucial, because what happens in that actual case will trickle down through the rest of the states in the country.
So what happened is the Genesee County Park said you cannot fly in this location. They had an ordinance, and that ordinance said you could not ascend or descend in an aircraft. So we had an individual, Jason Harrison, who goes out to the county park. He flies his drone. He's confronted by an officer. The officer says, well, you have a policy against drones. You can't fly that here. He said, can you show me the policy? No, I don't have it with me. Well, I guess I can fly then. In comes another officer, and the same question, can you show me the policy? And the guy says, no, you can't fly here. Right. Jason then said, let me ask you a question. Am I in an aircraft? So it was clear at that point to the officers, he knew about the ordinance, right?
Right.
And the officer immediately said, turn around. Handcuffs, thrown in the back of the police car with a canine unit in there. So that's awful fun. They confiscated all his equipment. The drone, they confiscated his tablet. They confiscated his personal cell phone, even though it had nothing to do with the operation. They confiscated his GoPro, all of that. Now, here's the key. They didn't know how to turn off the cameras. They didn't know how to turn off the audio. Right. All of this is recorded. We have all this as great evidence. So we take this, and the ticket is sitting out there. We hire an attorney, Dean Greenblatt, a great attorney, by the way. He gets the prosecutor, and he says, hey, this doesn't apply. There's nothing about drones here. And prosecutor agrees, takes the ticket, and tosses it. So then the county government doubles down. They said, hey, next time we got to make sure that we are eliminating drones. So they add drones into their ordinance. And by doing that, they directly impacted themselves by violating the state law that says no locality, no subdivision can create or enforce a drone ordinance. So at that point, now we have standing to go to court.
In the state of Michigan.
In the state of Michigan, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
So we've taken them to court. The case is MCDO, which is Michigan Coalition of Drone Operators versus Genesee County. We had 2 court hearings on this. Initially, the judge had ruled with
Thank you so much.
preemptive injunction. So we did get a preemptive injunction for just one day, Thanksgiving Day, at the Mounds, which is a big 4x4 mud bog type of park. We went out to that park to fly on Thanksgiving morning, and lo and behold, sure enough, one person gets pulled over by the police for flying their drone. Happened to be me.
Wow.
So the individual had said, you can't fly drones here. And I got to say, today I can, thank you. And I have a court order that says so. He read the court order. We showed it to him, and he says, kind of bewildered. He's like, I wonder why the judge would do that, because he knows drones aren't allowed here. We just kind of laughed and went about our way. The second officer came up and said, I understand you have that injunction. Can I see it? I need to take a picture. We were not informed of this. So even though the court had ordered it and given it over to the county, the police chief there did not, send that out to all the officers. And so literally they were in violation. They were in contempt of court by even approaching us. Now we aren't, going to press charges with that. Instead, the court has asked for 14 days of briefs to finalize one particular portion of the case, and then we're expecting a decision. So that I'm certain that we could probably see a decision by the end of this week.
So basically, depending on this decision, will dictate how other states approach this issue of not. Go ahead, Paul.
Ryan, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Why, this may sound stupid, but why hasn't anybody in your group filed
Hadley,
in federal court for a designation about FAA rules and regulations? Then you don't have to go state by state by state. You get one federal judge to say that you can't do that, and that's how you spank all these municipalities.
You're right, Paul.
Yeah. So, Paul, you're asking the good question, and I'm going to tell you, here's our logic behind it. Mm-hmm. One, the federal government is a great idea when it comes to airspace. That's why Congress said to the FAA, here is all the airspace, you have jurisdiction over it. Here's the trouble. The FAA doesn't have a police officer on every single corner in every single town, and they don't have the funding for it. So where the FAA has come in and said, we have jurisdiction from the first blade of grass on up to the sky, they can't do enforcement. So they know that they need to partner with local law enforcement to have some type of enforcement. So,
well, Ryan, the only thing I would disagree is that the federal government uses the federal courts as their law enforcement division. Mm-hmm. So if you got a federal judge to say, don't do this again, or else you're in contempt of federal law, you don't need an FAA guy to go out there, because that'll trickle down and say, we're not messing with the federal government.
No. So I think you're going a step outside of where I'm at. So think about this. You don't have an ASI, and for people not familiar, an ASI is an aircraft safety inspector. They're the ones that are doing ramp checks on all pilots. Right. You don't have an ASI that's going to sit on every single corner to be able to find that rogue drone operator and do a ramp check on them. The FAA knows that. They are never going to have the funding for that.
But we're getting close to the ability to have all of our flights tracked.
Metro drones.
We are.
Yes.
Yep.
So that when you do fly, it's going to be automatically uploaded, and they can sit in an office somewhere and go, oh, wait a minute, you're in restricted airspace, you're over a naval base or whatever.
Yep.
That's
still,
coming.
The challenge there still remains that local law enforcement cannot enforce federal regulation. which is, it seems kind of odd, but that's the case. So that's
Now-
why you have ATF, right?
But-
Alcohol,
but
tobacco, and firearms.
I understand exactly what you're saying to the exact detail, but what happens is you have a city like New York, and you have a cop that's told there's no flying drones in this area. Now, personally, 9 out of 10 police officers that I deal with when it comes to flying a drone are for it, or they say, look, you bring it down and come back later or whatever. The point I'm getting to is, what about that one individual police officer, civilian, FPV pilot, whoever, mother with a baby, when they come to you and say, I know there's no flying drones here, and we've had it happen. Herman, Ray, that's in the chat, Big Matt. We had a lady call the police and say there were 4 of us, and we're all over 6 foot. She says there were 5 gentlemen doing something strange at the foot of the bridge.
Yep.
And the police did come. The sergeant, we all had our ID, we all had our drone registrations, etc. And the police came and said, someone reported you guys flying drones over the bridge and near the bridge, and each and every one of us pointed out, I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm there. And the police officers were cool about it, but they had to report, they had to show up and acknowledge that this person was upset about people flying drones.
But that happens with everything. And I mean, cops have chased people away for many things that they weren't breaking a law. It's all up to you as an individual of how well you are versed in the laws to be able to stand up for yourself at that point. I mean, that it falls way past drones. I mean, it's everything to kids hanging out in a street corner to God knows what.
Andrew, can I say one thing? I haven't said this, but this is our hold on, Herman. This is our disclaimer, because I may go squirrel, but the views and opinions that are heard tonight are not necessarily the views and opinions of everyone on the panel tonight.
And I don't think that the issue is the point of you can't fly here. I think the issue becomes the point of you cannot take off from here.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what a lot of people are missing. Sure, the FAA controls all of the airspace.
Yep.
But
You've hit it.
Mr. Parks Department, control this property right here.
Yep.
You can't take off from here. That's what you're hearing.
And that's exactly where we're at, Herman, is that
I understand that. That's why, because in New York, you're always going to get, you can't take off from here. Not you can't fly here. See, the verbiage, remember I said when we talk about verbiage, it comes out wrong, and then people take it wrong.
Yeah.
Because you didn't say the right thing. No, you cannot take off from here. You remember when we were in Philly, and the guy said, well, you can't take off from the pier here? So we did. We stepped off the pier and we took off from right off outside the pier.
Who allowed that comment? Hold on. Who allowed that comment from Josh Elm?
What comment?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
We got out. We came outside of that. We took off from outside the pier, and no one had any problems. The cops came by. They had no problems. Even that night when we were at the bridge you were talking about.
Right.
Cops came by. They saw our credentials. No problem. You know, it's when you start going into the Parks Department, the Parks Department is always going to steer you out. They're always going to steer you out. You can't take off from here.
And a lot don't stand up for themselves. A lot.
Well, what about hand launching?
To chase them out.
So when I went to Sedona, I did hand launching.
Well, Hadley, I'm
standing on the ground.
I'm going to give you guys the perfect
you're not allowed to
example.
launch from with a park ranger, and he said, as long as you hand launch, it's fine. You can't launch from the ground.
Hadley, here's a perfect example, and I'm going to show you how screwed up the drone laws are in New York. Herman was with me one time. The particular park that I've been teaching people how to fly drones in, and I fly FPV in for the last 4 years. I've run into supervisors, etc. It is a New York City Department of Parks park. But exactly at the border of the park starts, that's a state park. I've had employees and supervisors tell me, you can't fly in a city park, go to the state park to fly. Well, if you knew drone laws and rules, you'd know you can't fly in a state park. Now, I've actually had city parks department employees tell me, you can't fly over this park. And okay, I understand it. So what I do is I would stand on the borderline. And when the city parks department came to me, to fly, I would back up about 10 feet and I'd be in a state park and say, I'm not in your park. and you can't tell me that I can't fly over your park.
Lawrence, can I say something? You mentioned
Playing the property line, Lawrence.
you
That's
mentioned
awesome.
the city parks department person telling you to fly in the state park.
You remember that incident?
No, I understand it, but you have to remember one thing when it comes to drone laws and any laws, period, anything in general that has to do anything with a bureaucracy. If shoe tying was a city bureaucracy and your job was after the bow, you wouldn't know how to make a bow. You would have to wait for somebody else to make the bow so you can finish the whole tie.
Right.
Hey, Lawrence, real quick.
Problem.
Josh over here is a drone dude. He was just playing around. The guy you deleted his message. I just went to his channel. He's hardcore. He's a hardcore drone dude. He's just playing around.
Okay, I just get really get really aggressive. You know, Herman and a few other people on the panel have accused me of being a little overly aggressive.
But you even said that.
Not you, Lawrence. Oh, not you.
Not you.
I thought you were gonna ask for ID to get in the bar for a second.
Hey, Josh Elm, it's all cool, man. It's all cool.
Even though it's hard to be nice to some people.
Josh, I apologize. Stop it. We're not going squirrel. We're not going squirrel
Hey,
tonight.
Herman, you're still in charge of Lawrence tonight, Herman.
Okay. No,
Ryan, I did warn you.
But that's always going to be the issue of that you can't take off from here. And that's where the confrontation starts. And you know, sometimes, like I said, even though you know better, sometimes you're going to just have to pack up and move on.
This is true, and I agree. Now, from what Hadley says about hand launching, I have now, even though it's illegal to fly over in state parks, from state parks, I should word it, because you cannot take off in a state park. You can fly, hey, Capital Drones, you can fly over them.
Yeah.
Now, I've had...
Hang on to that thought. I have a case for you.
Yeah, no,
okay.
there is.
Let me explain my situation, and I want you to go right into it because we are from different states. And what I've had happen to me was I was walking through the state park with my drone bag, and the officer said, you know, there's no flying drones here. And I was like, yes, officer, I know. I'm just looking at some things that I want to fly. I want to fly that building over there. He's like, but there is no flying drones for him. And I said, officer, I do not intend on flying from here. Now, he followed me to the edge of the park, the state park, which is just his jurisdiction. And he stayed in the state park. And I nicely went across the street and took out my drone and set up, did my pre-flight and everything, and took off and flew. Now, not to be a knucklehead, I did not fly over him. I went and I flew around and I went to the obstacles I wanted to fly, and he could not do anything. Come to find out, he called the local police officer. Local police officer said, what are you doing? I said, I'm flying a drone. He says, where are you? I said, I'm over there, over the beach, taking some pictures. I showed him the screen. He said, okay, cool. After the police officer left, the Parks Department guy just pulled off, and that was it. Now, your situation, Ryan.
So now, this is not my situation. This is New York State Park.
Okay.
So you may not know him, but Mike Guerin was up in the Michigan, or up in the New York State Park area, and he was filming out there with a crew. That crew had gotten permits to film in the state park, and the park ranger came up to inspect their permits. And they said, yep, here's everything. We're all in order. We're going to have a drone here lift off pretty soon as well. And he said, oh, well, you can't fly a drone here without a permit. Oh, we'll go see him. He's got the permits. And so they went over to Mike and said, where's your permit? He's like, I'm not flying in this park. I'm going to go out here and be across the street. Well, you can't do that. You can't fly over the park either. He said, I absolutely can. Well, no, you can't. So he ended up calling another park ranger. The park ranger called another park ranger, and as Mike was outside of the park, parked on a public street that was not within the property, even before he got his drone out to fly, he was ticketed for flying over the state park. He's going to be in court this February coming up to defend that charge.
What park?
Wow.
New York State Park.
What's that, Hadley?
That was a mistake on their behalf. He's going to win.
He is going to win. And like I feel with this case that you guys are advocating for in Michigan, this gentleman's going to win. But who do I contact here in New York, or where do I start the ball rolling down the hill here in New York to start advocating, or who would I have to contact to say, you guys have to straighten these laws out? And my problem is the New York City Department of Parks says there's no flying drones in our city parks. And there are thousands of them in New York, okay? And I'm going to tell you, they print out brand new signs every freaking summer for these parks. No barbecuing, no drugs, no alcohol, no homelessness, no this, no that. And there's no drone stamp. There's no rule number 15, Article A, saying there's no flying drone laws in New York. And to be honest, I get tired of it.
But you know, I noticed something there's a couple of communities, and one is the drone community. I'm finding videos, I know you guys have seen them too. The one that always likes to stick it to the man, you know, that always comes through. And I think there's a lot to be said for what Herman said about picking and choosing battles. Too many battles sometimes can almost hurt the community more in the meantime. Because you're right, the person that's there at the moment, they can throw you off. Yes, you can fight it later. But you notice the ones that do these sticking it to the man videos, they're not just one. It's not an isolated case. They tend to have about 30 by the year is up.
Yeah.
Go out to it. And that's hurting your community as well, because that starts to represent them. That starts to sicken more people from warming up to the idea of it. You know, I think there's right ways of doing it, like you guys have been talking about, going to court. And there's times you have to go to defend yourself. And then there's sometimes maybe it's just better on an afternoon if you're not stuck and it's a big shoot and everybody waiting to say, you know what, I'll wait for the next day, another guy, and try it. Just something I've just noticed. I am seeing more and more suggested, and the same guys always seem to fight with everybody. They're almost like picking battles on a weekly basis. Just
I can say 2 words: clickbait.
Right, a lot of it.
Yeah, but I mean, the whole time they are still fighting with an official about it. You know,
true. This is true.
It's still going on.
But it's like the video of the guy that's sitting in the car, and the officer says, "Can you lower down your window?"
Yeah, yeah.
Says, no, I'm not. You understand?
Yeah, that's it. That, you know, he's given the Pledge of Allegiance.
That same gentleman has had several issues in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but getting back to drone talk, my issue is drone laws in the state of New York are effed up. You guys in other states don't have it half as bad. There's actually a fear of being tased for flying drones in New York.
You might want to come out here, Lawrence, and try flying out here.
So what I'm going to suggest is that you definitely need to have the preemption clause that Michigan has. And
well, how do we get on this list of 17 states that are for drone advocacy?
Yep.
And et cetera.
So the first is we got to get this case to go through, because once the case goes through, that's kind of it's not a precedent for any other state per se, but it does give an idea that, hey, if Michigan has this precedent in place and it does knock out all these other localities,
it'll be written into law as well.
Well, it already is, right? So that just reinforces that the law is the law of the state.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in the case in Michigan, but let's take a state like New York. What is in the best interest for New York State to implement something that says that no county or local municipality can implement any drone laws? I don't see how it works in their favor.
Well, it does, and that's what I was trying to get into when I was talking about, you know, not having the FAA not having an ability to have an ASI on every single street corner around the United States. Mm-hmm. What we anticipate is, and the FAA has kind of hinted at it, is that at some point in time, they're going to turn over the first few feet of airspace. My guess is probably the first 200 feet of airspace over to state governments to have jurisdiction.
Oh,
now,
boy.
Exactly. They can't do that if every single little municipality has their own drone ordinance, right? Because that's a nightmare. But they can do that if each state has a preemption clause that says we are the controlling entity for all drone ordinances. So in that situation, it becomes more like your interstate highway, right? You do have the United States has a federal Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. But each state has their own Department of Transportation that's responsible for those federal highways. Right. There's still money that's going from the federal government to those states to manage that type of situation. We anticipate the same thing is going to happen with low-level aviation.
Now, Ryan, can I ask you this? Because what I see happening or could occur with something like that is that just like our roads that you mentioned, to use those state roads, we have to pay what is called a toll. And it's just like in the airports and the plane airlines, using an airport, there's money that's goes back and forth for those planes to take off. Now, is each local park or street corner now an airport? And are they going to start charging me every time I take the drone off the ground?
Yep, and that's the exact same question that the counties and cities are asking too. So New York City, right? They were people that came out and said, look, we have an airport at every single street corner. We have an airport at every single park. We don't have any control over this. We want control over this. And at the same token, we as pilots, we want an airport at every single street park. We want, to be able to fly wherever we want. So now if you take a look at that Department of Transportation model, yes, there's licensing for big trucks. Yes, there's tolls for certain highways. But a lot of it still is quite open, right? And you have to think of the tiers that are involved. So I'm certain you don't pay a license for your bicycle or your skateboard or your scooter yet. Exactly. And so that's the idea, that these are still those small little aviation, in some case, true toys, right? They aren't meant for anything other but entertainment. And so are you going to tax those or require a permit that's prohibitive of flying versus, hey, you've got an M210 and you're doing commercial work, we should be able to charge you a tax of, $50 a year for you to operate within our state.
Okay, now
you start thinking of that as long as, do I pay for a car registration?
Here's the quick question. I wanted to point out something that someone mentioned in the chat, above and beyond, but we're talking the hobbyist 107 pilot, and not once has anyone even mentioned into the fact that they're starting these drone deliveries. Above and beyond in the chat says drone delivery is going to screw us up as far as SGL, which is meaning at a certain altitude, at a certain ceiling, we're not going to be able to breach it. Right now, our ceiling height is 400 feet in most states in the United States, okay, if not all. And my point is, they opened up a 50-mile drone highway in New York here, from Rome, New York to some other area. And they, for the last 2 years, have been testing drones, going back and forth in directions. How and where will this affect us? Because right now, the way I see it, and I'm going to be honest about it, for each and every highway that opens up, there's less and less space for us to fly. Mm-hmm. And no one's thinking about that either. Everyone's saying, I want to fly, but you need to think about the fact they're delivering body parts and hearts and everything already now in Virginia and other states like that. When it comes to New York right now, Uber is fighting to lobby for a drone highway from Manhattan to JFK International Airport right now, so above and beyond has a valid point. Not only do the hobbyists have to worry and the 107 pilots, but when they introduce these drone highways, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it if we can't even handle flying in a local park?
You talk about body parts. Herman, he sent up his ass today on the Mavic 2 and told me to kiss it. So yeah, that's happening.
Andrew. I just can't.
Not even an hour.
Squirrel. We have 33 minutes to go, Andrew.
No, but I do have to leave soon.
I appreciate you, though.
I do have to leave soon, though, but it's great to hang out with you guys. I'm not going to hijack the show. I just want to make an apology. I went a little far on something by digging it up. So I want to apologize to Herman. I want to apologize to Lawrence.
Here we go.
No.
I did some digging.
Here we go.
I did some digging.
Here we go.
And I mean, I have nothing against people earning past incomes or nothing. And I didn't want to make it sound like they're rich and famous for all this. I know they're on YouTube like everybody else. So I just want to say I'm sorry, but through my digging, this kind of came up, and I'm asking you guys, please do not ridicule them, okay? Everybody has to earn a living. The show went down. They didn't save as much. And this is what I came across later on today.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, no.
Oh,
no,
Lord.
No.
I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I came across it. I just wanted to bring it out so nobody brings it up later.
Andrew, if you were close enough, I'd punch you.
See, now it's
hold on, Ryan. We have to go squirrel for a minute. Now, Andrew, it's full out war.
It's on.
I'm going out. I'm investing in Adobe Photoshop tomorrow. It's open war now.
Know that I still love you and I'm not judging, okay? I just want you to know that Herman Lawrence.
You see what we have to deal with, Ryan?
It's like a daily thing.
This is a normal thing. They do this every day.
You should, Andrew. I'm telling you, it's on.
Thank you, Herman.
Herman, I told you earlier you needed to go buy some. You should have been ready.
All I can say before we get back to the subject, Andrew,
yeah.
Before I leave this earth, I will get you back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's nothing to. You don't have to thank me. I'm all good.
Oh, yeah.
It's all good. And Herman's happier. We got his ring on. His football ring is now on his picture. So he like today.
You see now.
You put an earring on.
Yeah.
You know what?
So plain.
Hold on.
This is a reminder. Feed me up.
All right.
Oh my goodness.
On that note, I hate to leave you, but I gotta go.
No, it's okay. That's right. Hit and run, right? Hit and run. Just like a New Yorker.
You hate to leave.
You see what he just did, right? He said, look up, and when you looked up, he punched you in the belly.
Pretty much.
Right.
We appreciate
$20
you.
a month, Lawrence.
We appreciate you.
$20 a month.
I
for Adobe
appreciate
Photoshop.
Hey, Andrew, aren't you going to stick around? Because Lawrence at the end of the show always does his cardboard dance.
Here we go.
Yeah, well,
He's going to break dance for us.
Brian,
or is that going to happen on the Christmas show over Canadian Drone Hub?
Paul Murray is the YouTube advocate for starting everyone to do stuff.
We're the Sims, and he plays us. That's all we are.
Okay,
Ryan, my apologies.
Can we get another drop in before Andrew? Before you go, let's get another drop in and get it out the way, because Hadley wasn't here, and we need to diverse from the squirrel moment.
Not a point.
Okay, you want to do it, Herman? I know, Herman. We got to push through this.
What happened? I'm good.
Okay.
Sunday Night with Those Guys are sponsored by
Those guys. Andrew, you're gonna burn.
Hey, anybody that I don't know if you got the link for Pusa Studios.
Yeah.
Just put it in.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, tweet it out. Tell a friend.
Tweet it out. Listen.
Tell anybody you know at a close ears. Notice. Go on over there at 7 o'clock.
Get those $2 super chats ready.
Message in there on your super chat, whatever. Make sure you let them know.
And if you can't,
Andrew loves the lipstick.
Yes.
Get him with the lipstick.
The objective
is Herman and Lawrence don't feel bad. They just made money. They got money to burn now. Where it came from, we're still figuring it out. We're putting it together.
Here we go. I can't.
I can't even, man. Oh my God.
Oh, see, you didn't know I could control that, did you?
Passed on the finger, my friend.
But you guys, that's the link right there for Pusa Studios.
Yeah, see, you ought to break out in a damn sweat.
Hey, Ray's eyes are still burning.
You need to break out in a sweat, Andrew.
That's too much, yo.
Ryan, I have to commend you. You're holding it together well.
Yeah, Herman with that pilot uniform, that did it right there, yo. That's the ultimate, yo.
Oh, you want to see it one more time?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew can show it to you one more time.
Here, this is for you guys.
I copied it. Yeah, I have it.
Somebody with me here, and this is for you guys. You earned it, so there you go.
Oh, she's got the lipstick on.
Yeah, there
Can
we
you get him?
I deserve it after this.
No, she's got to pull out the lipstick and just draw in his eyebrows with the lipstick.
Be over there later.
Brian, by laughing, you just encourage. Thank you so much because.
Whatever, just get it done.
Thank you so much because each one of those.
He got it on his forehead.
Each one of those lipstick marks tonight, you're going to say super chat so much you're going to lose your voice because we're giving $2 super chats until the end of the stream.
Those are lipstick. What do you call them? Something.
Hold it, Andrew. Hold on, Paul. Everyone, before we do this, how about every time there's a super chat, you put lipstick on and give him a kiss until his entire face is red.
Super chat.
You would love that, wouldn't you? And then I can get a screenshot and post it on somewhere.
The picture wasn't that bad, you know.
Listen, you're gonna burn.
Compared to what?
We're letting you know, Andrew's wifey. We're coming for him.
Hey, I got an idea. If he gets enough in super chats, go get that color shampoo stuff and color his beard.
No, that's
yeah.
It only lasts a week.
Make sure you super chat a divorce lawyer while you're.
Hey, Andrew,
you're starting early, Andrew.
Ray wants to see the Captain Herman. He didn't see it.
Oh, hold on. After this live stream, we're gonna jump over to Pusa Studios, and every time, but you don't know what's going on, Ryan. What happens is on Pusa Studios, every time someone like Plummet FPV just donated $2 to those guys, and we appreciate you highly. But for every time that someone donates money to his channel, his wife goes super chat, super chat. And
because it is time for super chat.
So instead of doing it for every time someone donates $5 or $10, if you do like in a strip club and do $22 at a time, eventually she'll run out of her voice will go or
you'd be surprised.
The whole idea is to get his face all marked up by putting in
right.
Hit him with the lipstick, give him some loving. He likes the lipstick.
Just have good friends.
Go on over there, tweet it out, tell a friend.
Oh, Andrew, the fun is just starting.
Yeah.
Tweet it out, right, Herman?
Yeah.
Ryan,
anybody wants that Christmas
is there a website or something that we can go to, Ryan, that will
tweet it out, tell your friends?
Yes, that's true.
Hey, buddy.
Is there a web to get back on subject? Is there a website or someplace we can go to look?
I'm gonna go. You guys take care. See you after.
All right.
Everybody,
Andrew,
take care.
So probably what there isn't a website at this point. Once a decision comes out, that final decision, we'll have multiple articles that hit the mainstream media because this is a big case for precedents. And
well, we would really. It's only 6:06. We have like another 24 minutes left, but we would highly appreciate it if you keep us abreast of what's going on. You're
absolutely
those guys, New York City, but
and as far as New York goes, you know that there is a commissioner right now that's looking at rewriting that navigation law, and so data is being collected. Precision Hawk is taking a lead on that, as is DJI, and so probably the easiest way that you can be a part of that is to engage your commissioners. That can be by calling them, that can be by letter bombing them. I do find that letters are much more important than phone calls because a letter is going to be stuck forever. It can be FOIA requested so that others can find out who's written in favor of a particular ordinance. And you can have multiple people send those in. So if you've got a community of folks that are willing to advocate for drones and want to push some lobbying effort.
Trust me, here in New York, there's a few people that would love to hold up flags and march down the street.
Yep. And you don't need to do that.
I know.
Instead, what I would suggest is you create a talking points, right? A list of talking points to say, here's the safety of drones. Here's, all the activities that drones can be a part of that are improving your lives. And if you have those talking points listed out, you can then give those out to your community members and say, please write a letter to your commissioners, write a letter to the mayor, write a letter to all commissioners, and get those out into the mail as soon as possible, such that then they've got ammunition to say, hey, we've got a bunch of folks that really want us to take a look at this aviation law. And hey, it's 70 plus years old. It's time to really think about the new technology.
Exactly
and make
my
the
point.
amendments.
Exactly my point, because here in New York, the laws that they're quoting are from when people used to land helicopters and fly. You understand what I'm saying? And they're still going by these laws and rules here in New York, especially. And you've seen it across the country. If it happens in New York and or California or vice versa, it'll spread like a virus. You know, I mean, not to say other states aren't important, but for some weird reason in the United States, every place has a 42nd Street, every place has a Martin Luther King Boulevard, every place has a Penn Station. So if New York, is California on that list of 17?
They are not.
Exactly my point. So if we here in New York could start a snowball rolling downhill, that's all it takes is a little freaking snowball this small to get it rolling. And if not, if it doesn't happen soon, at least something's rolling and it's out there.
And honestly, that's one of the reasons that Michigan was one of the first to take on this preemption clause, because when you went back to look at the automobile industry, right? Michigan is the automobile industry. You know, the big three are in Michigan. Well, what happened in the automobile industry when it first started was that you had laws that said in order to drive a car down a street, you had to have somebody out front waving a red flag so that horses weren't scared by the motor vehicle.
Right.
I remember that.
Michigan knows, hey, you can't do that. This is new technology. We need to make it accessible. And so when they looked at, here's another vehicle coming into play, and we want to be a part of that, they said, you know, we've got to make sure that you don't have these stupid little laws prohibiting the advancement of this technology. And I think if you approach your counselors, your representatives at the state level, and are able to say, hey, we need to start thinking about this new technology and what it could mean for our economy as a state, as a city, and give them that detail about how many operations are already taking place legally under federal regulation, and how they need to be a part to advance that. You've got a better shot of making the lobbying effort to put in that preemption clause.
Well, here's something that Herman says all the time, and maybe we should say it a little more. But in a state where, don't worry, Herman, it's nothing crazy. In a state where we buy drones at an alarming rate in New York City, tourists actually come here without their drone because they hear there's no flying drones in New York, when that does pertain to certain areas. But the point I'm getting to is you can't make something that you tax illegal. So how are they selling drones in New York at an alarming rate and still saying it's illegal is beyond me. But that needs to change dramatically. And not just here in New York, but every place you can buy a freaking drone, which is in every one of the states.
Absolutely.
You know, so there's a lot for us to a lot of information to find out. But here in New York, I would love for New York City, if not New York State, get on that list of 17 states of drone advocates, and there needs to be some kind of main source that all these states can go to and put info and data and contacts together to get the ball rolling.
Oh, we gotta see where this goes first, because like I said, a state like New York,
right?
I'm just interested to see what would be like, you know, because I really think that is, if they can keep you and everybody else misinformed, uninformed, they don't care, because half of law enforcement is misinformed and uninformed too. And as long as you don't know, half the battle is done.
Well, and that's one of the problems with the aviation law is that finally the NYPD and NYFD, they both figured out it applies to them too. So legally, they are not able to fly their drones. And so now they've got a real interest to have that aviation law changed.
Well,
So
like you said,
But the first thing that they'll do is they'll resort back to quoting what you're going to quote to them is the federal law.
Yep.
And local municipality, when it comes to law enforcement, they always believe in what's good for the goose is never good for the gander.
Yeah, I understand.
Unfortunately, it's like that, and it's important not just for us drone hobbyists, but and I classify FPV pilots in another class, but it's getting to the point now where people are actually switching from camera drone flying and flying FPV because of the freedom.
Now,
all right, I can build a drone. I can have a drone that weighs less than 250 grams and fly it with no problem. And
but your drone flying at a higher speed and can cause more damage than somebody else's drone like us just flying about 3-4 miles an hour. So that's the problem. That FPV thing is going to be a problem. Soon as somebody get wrapped upside the head, that's going to be in it. That's going to be in it. Because I see your guys is expert, man. Like my man over there with that cool hat on. Now, I ain't talking about you. Like you. But anybody else that's learning that FPV, boy, you better learn it because you have a more risk of hurting somebody with that than a regular drone.
Oh, yeah, I agree. To get hit with a piece of carbon fiber traveling at 75 miles per hour.
Yeah, one of Justin's mods, you get killed.
That's Ryan, we highly appreciate you coming on and explaining a lot of stuff. Now we need to sit back and find out what's going on with that case, and it's imperative that we keep up with it, because if and when you guys win this case, I'd be blasting it all over social media like crazy.
So it definitely will,
like a virus.
Yep, it definitely will. There's already national magazines that have committed to writing articles on it because it is such a
Other countries are actually watching this. Geeks Vana, who does drone. Geeks Vana, Sean, he does drone news from the UK.
I'm doing a Zoom with him later this week.
see, he's a good man. I like the drone news that he gets. So a few other people do drone news, and it's like wah 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 wah. But he usually has something of interest that needs to be heard. So the fact that you're going on his live stream, that should be really, really nice. He's another one of those guys' members. You know, unfortunately, we will have to have a follow-up interview with Jason when the case finishes too. See, he's on point. He's on point. Definitely. Mr. Crowley, we appreciate you and thanks for popping in. We appreciate everyone for coming in. We have about a little less than 15 minutes to the live stream. Now you guys can go squirrel. I have to step away for a minute.
15 minutes.
I have to step away for a minute.
What's wrong with your clock? Yeah.
Huh?
It was 45 minutes. What's wrong with your clock?
What are you talking about? 6:30. Oh,
wow.
Wow. I'm trying to kick y'all out of here and go eat dinner. That's
yeah, I know what you're trying to do.
Oh, nice try, right?
You ate yesterday.
I just thought that Herman planned this with Lawrence so that you guys can gather all your friends to.
Paul is experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
He was talking about going over.
He doesn't know he's muted yet.
No, I think he knows.
So Lawrence, I'll take you down another squirrel path, right? And this one is a very important one, actually. Next week, or at the end of this week, the December 20th, the FAA is going to come out with the next NPRM. And that's the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. And it's going to be for remote ID. This is a huge proposed rule where they're going to start saying your drone needs to have a remote ID tied to the operator. that they can then have police, FAA officials, etc., be able to determine where your drone is. Is it operating in legal airspace? Does it have the necessary controlled airspace authorization? And be able to spot you as the operator in location to that drone.
Well,
so we aren't, in the know as to exactly what that NPRM entails, but we have some clues about that. And probably the big piece here is that once it hits, we need everybody, and I do mean everybody in the drone community, whether you're a Part 107 or a hobbyist or just somebody that's interested in drones, to take a look at that and ready some comments. Now, here's the important piece. You can't just go, hey, I don't like this. Please don't implement this, because the FAA is going to look at that comment and go, it's nothing to me. We're going to get rid of it.
Specify. You have to be specific.
Very specific. You have to back it up with data, right? Be sure to have the data to say, here's why you shouldn't have this. Here's the concerns because of it. Here's the costs that might be associated with it. And then the other piece with that, propose the alternate solution. Give a different solution that's better than what they're providing in the proposed solution, if that's something that you think of, right? And the challenge here is that the FAA is going to look through all the comments. That's number one.
Right.
But the comments that come from organizations are going to get priority to those comments that come from individuals. So if you are an organization of 50 people, 100 people, 10,000 people, then the FAA gives that weight, because they're saying, hey, wait a minute, these guys are a stakeholder in this, versus an individual who's just, la-di-da, I want to fly my drone.
We need to get any and everybody you can.
Organize.
Get
right?
your following on board.
Exactly. Get everybody on board. And this is another one where we create those talking points. Here's all the things that you should mention in your comments, or things that you could mention. Here's, take whatever line items you want and give them the data that would be necessary for them to counteract whatever proposal is coming forward. Now, I can tell you that there are going to be groups out there that have an adamant need for remote ID. Department of Homeland Security demands it, right? And you have places out there that are going to absolutely be against remote ID, like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, who is going to say, hey, wait a minute, what happens when my 13-year-old is out flying? You're going to show my name or their name and their address to somebody who has a beef about drones and potentially is going to come over and shoot them. So there's that real concern about privacy, and there's that real concern about terrorism, and we've got to align someplace in between.
Locations on our cars.
What'd you say, Hadley?
They want to have them on our cars, but we've got those people that's
right. Yep.
Right.
And that's us this time around, right?
Yes, it
is.
Right.
We spoke about this on one of our shows about that. And how far that was going to go, whether or not it was going to be available.
I'll be right back.
To the average Joe to look up on an app on his phone the location of that said pilot, and that was something that we don't believe is going to get to that point.
Yeah.
Well, and what I've heard from the FAA, and I was just out in New York City to hear this, is that there's going to be tiers. They're talking about tiers of access. So a local police officer is going to have a tier where maybe they can identify the person's name and the person's address, right? And they're going to have a potential public tier where they aren't going to have a name per se, but they'll have the registration number, where then that person can go to the police and say, hey, this particular drone registered with this number was flying directly over my head. And now it's up to the police to look up that and go, oh yeah, we can match that. Or you have ATC, right, that has all the information, everything, because they need to know it.
Well, the drone has to be equipped with a barometer, all kinds of different things to actually determine the height of it, and to put everything for an FPV drone. That's where there's going to be an issue with previously sold products and products sold after January. And I been informed about what they're going to be doing, but we don't know until they approve everything and sign off on it. But I have a feeling they're just going to strong arm this thing. So we're not going to, we got to try though. We can't not try.
And that's probably going to hurt their sales as well too.
It's going to kill sales.
Yep.
It is. It's going to kill the manufacturers that have stuff on the shelf that's previous to this ban that they're going to have to pull back in and revamp and repackage and resell. So like there's issues.
Yeah, and that's where we do have to wait for that NPRM to actually hit so that we can do the investigative effort as to what is actually impacted and then determine how we respond. What I'm really waiting on, though, is that we know that remote ID is going to be tied to UTM, the unmanned traffic management system that NASA's been working on. They've had their 4th test. They're going into the test number 5 to finalize. So we suspect that that's going to merge together with a remote ID, and then you're really going to have a concern of, hey, this person is flying at this location, and here's exactly where they're at. If that information is to get down to somebody who's got a beef with drones, we could have some fatalities where instead of shooting the drone, they're going to go find the operator and cause real concern.
Yeah, and that means you have to have, like, your launch point is going to be documented. Your transmitter, that's going to be extremely hard to put that kind of a system in the transmitters that like we currently have. You know,
from what I've understood at this point, it's not anything that they're adding to the drone. Instead, they're using either one of 2 methods or a combination of both, of Wi-Fi or LGE. So some type of cellular network to do that tracking.
But what if you don't have no cellular network and none of that? Because my tablets, I don't have no cellular on it at all. Right. Well, if I want to do it, I tell her to do my iPhone. You know what I mean? Give it a hotspot. But I keep mine off for that.
Your drones can already be detected.
Yes.
Yeah, we know that. But I'm just speaking about what he just said. Like, you can't track me down if I don't have no cell data. You can't track me.
Maybe they're tracking the connection between the drone, the signal that you're sending to the drone, and the drone is sending to you.
I'm in the middle, right? Yeah. So that means they have to have a gun up there somewhere like that.
Well, they would just need three locations to determine where you are.
Yep, just to triangulate you. That's it.
Got you.
Yeah.
But I'm always good in my hood. You know what I mean? Wherever I go, I'm backed up by the shield. I don't have no problem. Like you were just saying earlier, I educate these guys out there, captains, lieutenants, 4-star chiefs, all of them. And they all know me in my hood. That's Ray Hall. He's a professional drone guy. I even found things in the water for them floating around. So I work heavily with them. So I'm not promoting no rogue flying. That's why I stay away from guys like that. And I do what I do. I don't need to go over 400 to get my shot. You know, all those things, man. And
well, that's because you're filming half-naked women.
Oh, watch yourself. But she asked for it, though. She asked for that.
I know.
She asked for that. Come on. She asked for that. So I'm just saying, man, we all got to each one teach one, man. Even the rogue players that we know, let them know. Like, listen, man, rogue it down a little bit. You're trying to get something past, like, you know, supporting these guys and have them in these groups and saying it's okay. And you don't want people drone police and all that. You need to drone police some of these clowns, man. Seriously.
Well, above and beyond is correct. The UUID is activated when your equipment is running and transmitting. And that's how come when we've had meetups here in New York, and Herman and I, and maybe 1 or 2 other pilots would notice a helicopter would be hovering about a quarter mile to a half mile away. And what they were doing at that time, Ryan, was collecting data of all the drone pilots. And the good thing about flying so much in New York is, after a while, the helicopters come by, collect your data, and they say, oh, we already got him, and they fly away.
Yeah, yeah.
Now that Lance is up and running, you don't need helicopters to track drones and stuff. As soon as you go up in the air, they pretty much know where you are. So, and my problem is if they know where we are and they know what we're doing, and they know that certain pilots are harmless and certain pilots may fly a little reckless, or where they're not supposed to, why are they not checking these guys out?
Well, you know, and here's a curiosity. The
Who's
FAA
to say they're not, though.
Well, yeah, they aren't. So here's a curiosity. So
well, I know
FAA,
people. I do know people that are getting letters, though.
I know a few people that got letters.
Yep. So last year, the FAA changed from their educational stance to an enforcement stance. That came out when the FMRA was passed in October of 2018. Following that, in February, the FAA issued Direct Order 8900. And 8900 went out to every single ASI, and it said, you will perform X number of, so they gave a quota of ramp checks on UAS operators. Now, a ramp check is, same as a manned aircraft. The ASI can come up to you, they can inspect your aircraft, they can ask you questions about your operation. They can request to see your identification. Well, I should say your certification or your hobbyist permit registration. They actually can even physically damage your drone. That is allowed, as they go through this. So if you're a Part 107 operator and you get approached by an ASI, they can really on the spot retest you, do your recurrency. The idea of that was that they would be able to target specific areas where they were seeing multiple near sighting reports. So New York City, some of the busiest airspace in the country, has a lot of aircraft reporting near misses with drones. They're not valid necessarily, but they're reporting a lot.
Thank you for saying that.
Exactly. So the ASIs are required by the FAA for those areas to do more ramp checks. Right. Now, here's the trouble. Think about this. How are they going to know where to go and ramp check? They don't know. So instead, they look at, oh, somebody issued a Lance request for tomorrow. I'm going to make sure that I go there tomorrow and I'll ramp check them to make my quota. So what they're doing is they're going to folks who are already abiding by the rules. So there's not a real concern, right? But they're pushing this ramp check on those law-abiding people. And we've had situations where I know one person, he's been ramp checked 20 times. 20 times for
That's
one
abuse.
person. Exactly. And it's not that he's doing anything wrong. In fact, he's doing everything right. But it's the idea that, oh, I'm an ASI, I have a quota to fill. I know who I can fill that quota with.
We have the same thing with hazmat trucks. I'm a CDL hazmat driver, and I've been pulled over, searched. I've been scaled, inspected, and then 3 miles down the road, another guy will pull me over, and I'll tell him, hey, here's everything that the last guy went through. He goes, I got to do it too.
Yep.
It's part of their quota.
Yep.
Well,
and that follows under the Department of Transportation, which runs the FAA.
Well, you had brought up a question of how do they know where to go and fly, and I can tell you here in New York there are hot spots.
Oh,
the number one hot spot here in New York is Manhattan. All you have to do is hang out on the perimeter of Manhattan, and at some time and point, somebody, some damn where is going to try and take off in Manhattan, and someone's going to try and fly into Manhattan.
Yeah,
My
except
problem
the concern,
is,
right?
But my problem is there are people who are doing it professionally as a 107 pilot, and then there are just people doing it because they can.
Right.
Now,
but if you're an ASI and you have a quota, because 8900, the Direct Order 8900 says you must do this many ramp checks on people, you aren't going to hang out on a corner just on the hopes that you get somebody. Instead, you're going to go to this place where you know somebody is absolutely going to be flying.
But this is what I'm saying right now, Ryan. I could get in a car and go to 5 spots that I guarantee you, if the weather's nice, that I guarantee you drone pilots will be taking off from or flying over.
Right, but you don't know. You might have to hang out there for an hour.
No,
that's okay.
But what they're doing is they're saying, look, I know where I can find this guy because I have a Lance request that's issued for tomorrow at 3:30 p.m.
Right.
I have the exact location where they plan to fly.
Those are premeditated.
Exactly. And so that's what the ASI is doing, is they're going, I got a quota to fill. I know where I'm going to fill it, and I'm going to go right there to do it. They're grabbing the wrong people, right? So they're issuing those ramp checks against folks who are legally flying
What you
versus
say,
chasing the.
So Paul Murray and I had a discussion earlier about something about this. What we really need is an advocacy group that and I know the problems involved with starting that thing, and the AMA is not that group.
No.
But that's something that you might want to address, because I know there are a few folks that have tried to start this thing and it kind of fizzles out. Not everybody wants to join it. But there really needs to be a group where we all join in together to create one voice. And we send a group of people to lobby for us, to speak on our behalf, and it would be similar to the AMA, but it would be focused on drone pilots, because the AMA wants you to be at their fields. It's an old boy network. They have their way of doing things. And I think that's great. It's just not what we're doing right now. We're more out trying to capture, whether it be nature or urban settings or whatever the case may be, but we need somebody that represents us.
And they taking our money every year.
Well,
there are two groups right now that are doing that, right? AUVSI is the largest group that's trying to do that.
What is that?
It's called AUVSI. And AUVSI is about all things unmanned. So it's not just drones. It's going to be the submersibles, right? It's going to be autonomous vehicles. So I
have the submersible.
So your Tesla, right? So it drives itself. So AUVSI is about all that new technology that's doing that, but they're trying to advocate for everybody versus just drones. On the other side, you have DJI, who set up Node. And Node is supposed to go out and advocate for drones at each various state level or regional level. But, people don't know about these things, right? And with DJI, well, now you're tied to one specific manufacturer. Yes, they do all drones and all ordinances, but it's not.
But it should not be the manufacturer, though, because there's no way they're not going to look at it from their point of view and what is in our favor to keep selling a product. It needs to be the end user creates a group. And I understand the complications of getting that started. It becomes a popularity contest and all that fun stuff. But it needs to be said, that publicly, it needs to be said that we should start a group similar to the AMA that is run by everyday users, 107 pilots, as well as hobby pilots. I mean, if you look at the latest FAA numbers, we far surpass what the AMA does. There are more hobby pilots than there are 107 pilots. I'm going to let Paul jump in
just a moment.
Yeah, Paul.
I nominate Curtis. Do I have a second? To start the group. I nominate Curtis.
Can I say something? Yeah, we spoke about this months ago. We had even did a show where we went on to talk about that, and everybody is in favor of it, but no one knows how to get it started. No one wanted to take that into any consideration as to even.
That's a job for somebody. That is the job.
Well, it is. That's where
somebody needs to be paid to do that. There needs to be
exactly, and that's where the funds. That's where the funds from the membership come from.
We can't talk about it amongst 8 of us here or the 15 or 20 people that are in the chat.
But you can't not talk about it either.
You're right. But when we talked about how to spread it, and we mentioned things about there's hundreds of us and bunch of Facebook groups with thousands of people across the country, you get them speaking about it. But everybody died there, and it just died there.
Well, yeah, but Lawrence, the reason is somehow that people got to educate themselves. You're not going to get anywhere trying to promote something if you're against a $5 registration fee. You know what I mean? It's like
but see, what you guys don't realize is our live stream. Okay, they made it put it. What you don't realize is everybody wants to be a chief and no one wants to be an Indian.
Yeah,
and therein lies the problem.
Well, that's where you follow a similar model that what the AMA has. There is not one chief, that you elect the people that are there.
Right, but the AMA is failing at what they do.
Well, yes, the AMA is failing because we're looking at it from a drone perspective. They've been very successful in the model that they've been working on for years, where they have fields and people fly at the fields and they have regulations for those fields. Everything's been fine, and they've been really able to work with the FAA. But we come along and, you know, we're out flying outside their fields. We don't fit any of their models as far as, and I don't mean the drone models. I mean the what it
regulation,
the club model that they have.
Right.
Yeah.
So there needs to be an organization of us that goes out and advocates. And yes, those people that are running it, the president, vice president, secretary, whoever, those need to be paid folks, because it would be a full-time job. And the way you get that money is the same way the AMA does it, is you take membership dues. So yeah, I think it needs to happen. And I think it needs to be elected officials. They're elected for a time period. You know, so that, but the problem is, you know, like you said, it becomes a popularity contest. Well, we don't like this guy because he said that, and we don't like this guy because he said that. But at the same time, you know, you run it, it's an election. You vote for whoever you like to be in that position. Everybody needs to get behind the idea first. So there probably needs to be some sort of campaign started that, hey, we need to start a single unit. Now, I'm not talking about a Facebook group, just a single. We're going to create this thing that's going to represent all of us drone pilots, and it's going to be continually changing as to who runs it. So if you don't like this guy this month and you don't like what he did or this year or whatever, then you vote him out and you get the next person in there.
Yeah. Herman, you were going to say something before I did?
I understand exactly what he's talking about, but who are you telling it to?
My issue
well,
is
my point being is that,
hold on, Paul. Right now, my issue is I could come up with 100 people in 2 to 3 days, if not by the end of next week, that are willing to sign a petition and say, yes, I'm for this drone advocacy. And then you'll say, well, can you 100 people, which statistically the odds are only 30 are going to show up, can you go down to City Hall and let's file a petition or something to get this ball rolling? And out of those statistic 30 that will show up, maybe 10 will.
Yeah.
In the larger scheme of things, you have to be recognized by the FAA as a community based organization. I mean, there's a whole other thing that you got to do, but, and, you know, talking amongst us and the 22 people in the chat, if you don't talk about it, then nothing gets done. So you got to start the conversation somewhere.
Somebody needs to plant the seed.
I honestly think the conversation has already started on that, and we've had those conversations for years now. That the biggest challenge is dollars. I mean, let's face it. When you're talking about lobbying, you know, if I'm to lobby at the state of Michigan level, right, we're talking about thousands of dollars. If I'm talking about lobbying at the federal level, now we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So
and
if
it
we have
even
a community,
it even goes lower than that, because to advocate, I could advocate for the 5 boroughs here in New York City. Okay. And that may even be hundreds of dollars. But the point is to get the topic and subject addressed and addressed to the proper people. That's where the problem lies, because you can't do it for free.
Right.
And everyone's down to ride the brand new skateboard. But when they find out when you break it, you got to pay for it. Not so many people get on it, do they?
Well, and even the challenge. So if we're to talk about an organization that does dues, let's say you ask for $100 per year in dues. Think about how many people that would go, all right, I'll give that. Well, you're going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars at a federal level. Do you have that many people to get that kind of money off of, you know, just $100 dues? Well, now it really steps up. So now you have to start thinking, gosh, we've got to tie ourselves to manufacturers, to the DJIs, to the Uniques, to the Evos, right? Or Autels.
And it would be even simpler than this. I mean, we are a small live stream, a small channel that's just starting out there. Now, if you had people, now we know Billy Kyle, we know Ken Adobo, so we're trying to get in contact with Ken Herron personally. If you need people like this speaking on it, not just at this level, but You need people on all levels. Someone with 56,000 subscribers can do a hell of a lot better than someone with 3,000.
And Rotor Riot is already for the transponder systems. I heard.
Well, Rotor Riot is
selling out
for
for
it. You know why? Because Rotor Riot is slowly turning into DJI Riot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that top. And you know what I'm talking about, Hadley. Yeah, I see the
go
hands.
a little bit further and little more details, but to sum it up, that's pretty much the answer.
They've been bought out.
So
They have been bought out. Yes.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with DRL. They're for advocating drone rights and everything like that, but on a monopoly level.
Yeah.
There is no small man that can say, okay, you guys there on the panel, this is direction you can go. We can't do nothing without dinero.
And we have to be honest, that makes sense, right? Because why do they want to have, advocacy for everybody when they're really focused on just their membership?
Yes.
Well, here's something that could always drum up money. And if you were a person of business in the drone industry, there's a price markup on stuff. Say if you got a subscription to this advocacy, you get access to these companies at wholesale costs. You know how many more people would sign up? There would be a lot more because they're getting a discount.
Well, that's similar to what AMA does. There's benefits for joining the AMA.
Yes, there is, but there's it's for AMA. It's not for
there's benefits for joining AMA. Okay, I can take my AMA card and I can fly anywhere in the United States with my AMA card, but I can't go to a damn local park or a beach.
But I want you to think about the numbers of this. Do you know how many people are members of the AMA currently?
There's a lot.
Off the top of my head, if it was anything less than 2 million people, I would be disappointed.
Wow, you will be definitely disappointed then. Yeah. They've reached a high of 185,000.
Yep.
Out of how many?
They're going down.
They are going down.
You know
you're talking 185,000 people. Now their membership dues are $75 a year, so they aren't even $100,000 or $100 a year. Think of how many dollars they have to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like when I use the AMA, it's for FPV events, and you have to be a part of the AMA. And I always do their 3-month sign up. Instead of doing the 1 year, I just do the 3 months because the summer is only about 3 months anyways.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's even less money. I think it cost me $35 or $40.
Yeah. And then if you think about that, all that money is not going to advocacy. They have a great deal of administrative costs that's with that. They have a magazine that they're sending out, advertising. They put on events. So, they have hall rentals out in LA for their West Coast version. And
nothing about drones, though.
Yeah, I understand. But so it's that idea that here's one of the largest organizations. It actually is the largest hobby organization in the world. And yet they only have 185,000 members.
And
so if we're talking about creating an advocacy, we're in a challenging boat anyway.
But that
so
means
basically
that it's
the ones they lost was probably just drone pilots. They won, they're dropping.
But hold on, what that shows me is that 185,000 members, it's broke.
Yeah.
It's broke like a lot of other things in this country, and we won't go into that. But it's to that point where the AMA needs to be restructured, and right now I know why. So there's so well, I can't say specifically, but my idea and concept of why the AMA has such a low amount of numbers is the AMA has not stood up or spoke out for the average hobbyist in so freaking long. And every year they have symposiums, and the AMA has the right to be there. And what do? They send some guy with a camera sitting in the audience instead of trying to be on a panel to be heard. Now, some of these symposiums that they have concerning the FAA are only corporate because they're talking drone highways, they're talking drone deliveries and stuff like that. But if the AMA stomped its foot loud enough, it could be heard.
I don't know about that.
Me neither.
the AMA, so if we go back to the FMRA, right, the 2012 FMRA, the language in there for 336, that was actually directly from the AMA. The AMA lobbied to get 336 into 212 or 2012.
Yeah.
When it came to the 2018 FMRA, they were right there as well, lobbying. Guess what? 336 got repealed. So while they were digging in their heels and they had a good effort in 2012, and they actually had a larger membership in 2018,
I believe it.
Couldn't get it done.
Yeah. Well, you've got users in a unanimous what their sales numbers are that they're looking at, and then the statistics of what their memberships level is. It's 10% of what's out there.
So Geeks Vana says that in the UK we have the BMFA, who gave us free insurance for joining. Very big organization who are supposed to represent the hobby. They were given zero real voice in the new registration scheme. So
you know why they were given zero voice? Because they're not corporate, and corporate is what's taking over the drone community.
Well, it's money
right now.
Yeah, everybody's paying.
Real, it's money. It's
Yeah.
money.
You know, it's much easier for DJI to come in and say, I'm going to build 5 plants in the United States. All right. And I want only our people to work here, or whatever the case may be. But it's doesn't mean anything if you don't have the money to spend.
Yes.
And this is where the issue is. And it's hurting really bad to know that each day that goes by, the drone community is losing more and more airspace. Plain and simple. Like Herman said, if you want to fly, it's going to get to the point. We have an AMA park here in New York, Ryan, called Forest Park. Now, it may be a 75-foot to 100-foot radius circle, okay? But the only way you can fly in it, because it's in the middle of a forest, is to go straight up, look around, and then come back down. And Herman's been saying it for years. People won't be happy until you can just do that. And I see that slowly happening to us. In AMA fields here in New York. There's another one on Flushing Meadows. We call it Interference Park because it's within a 2-mile radius of an airport, but they allow you to fly there. And where you used to be able to fly all around the park, now, if you're not in that circle flying, you can get a ticket.
Yeah.
So I see things going downhill, but I refuse to give up and just lay there and not let anything happen.
It's coming towards the end of the year. Or like in New York City, all these elected officials, their term is about to be up. That's where you want to start something if you really want to start with these elected officials. I personally sit on several boards in New York City. I work on the mayor's board and everything, but this is the time. They're looking for to votes and everything like that. Just get it in their ear, let them know that this is not a bad thing, and try to get these people moving,
Yeah.
Because everybody needs some votes,
Need some investors that want to spend money on commercial.
That too. Yeah.
Commercial
that too.
nationwide. That's what we need is somebody that can put stuff on TV and be convincing enough and precise enough with the way they project it.
Good point.
It could fix a lot of problems for us. So the average.
And then those elected officials see that, then they'll jump. You're right about that.
Geeks Fauna says, did the same thing that happened with general aviation? It went from the relatively affordable thing to do many decades ago, and now it is dominated by expense and regulation.
Yes.
Like everything else in the world.
Yeah.
They give it to you. They say, here, play with it. And then once they perfect it, they say, oh, we're going to take the ball back. And now you can't play
you tax
ball.
everything.
It's monetizing. That's it.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah.
Well, we got 9 minutes left of this live stream. And if
it's 29 minutes. Take
you
your
better
clock.
stop it.
Check your clock. Well, I think you ought to give Ryan an opportunity if there's something he hasn't covered to cover here.
Yeah.
Gosh, I could go on for a million years on things, but probably the only other thing I want to make sure that everybody's aware of is that there is a bill going through the House of Representatives and Senate at this point. It's called the Drone Federalism Act. Now, this came up in the last cycle as well. It never made it out of committee, which was a very good thing. And yet they continue to try it again. This time around, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah is the sponsor. Dianne Feinstein was the representative or senator last time around. And they keep trying this. Now, what this does is this act would give control of all the airspace to local authorities. So you would have a New York City aggravation law in every single city, everywhere across the United States. Obviously, that's a bad thing for drone pilots. So if you've got a chance, this is where you can write your senator, inform them that they should vote against the Drone Federalism Act if it ever came up, that would effectively kill all this technology and this industry and hobby forever. And I right now I'm hearing that it has a 2% chance of getting out of committee. I would rather see that 2% chance be a negative 2% chance. So make sure you get a chance to write your senator and have that happen.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
That would change a lot of things. You know, it's going to affect the regular aviation as well, doing that.
Yes. Yep.
Well, until they decide where and when they're going to put these drone delivery highways, and your case that you guys are dealing with goes to in Michigan, pretty much our hands are tied like this, because without a judgment on the case you're dealing with, and without these companies finding when and where they're going to put these drone highways, pretty much we're in limbo. But while we're in limbo, that's when the ball should be pushed over the top of the hill.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for things that are coming through. So, you know, you talk about the drone highways. Amazon several years ago came out with a proposal that said, "Hey, we want to have anything under 200 feet to be low altitude. You can designate that to whoever, but we want these drone highways at 200 to 400 feet." Now, when you see something like that, what it's important to do is make sure everybody learns about it, and then you can take an assault on that. Another great example is ULC, Universal Law Committee. What they were doing is they were drafting a resolution that was giving air trespass voice. Right? They wanted to create a legislative agenda piece that could be used at the federal level and at state levels to institute aerial trespass. Now, fortunately, we were able to lobby against that and say, let's dummy down the language, and they did so. And just before they passed the final draft, we had all these other folks come in and go, "Oh, wait a minute, we haven't been part of this for 3 years, but we think that aerial trespass needs to go into effect." And fortunately, ULC came out and said, "You know what? No, we're going to table this effort because you guys, brought this in at the last minute." And so they're waiting for remote ID and UTM to get rolled out. But once that comes back into place, again, we're going to have to stand up and go, "No, we should not have aerial trespasses. If you have aerial trespass, that's going to kill this industry. That's going to kill this hobby."
I want to point something out real quick, Sean. Not Ryan, that Sean Geeks Fano put out. And that's we have all seen tonight how tough it is to motivate and get things done to protect our hobby. We should also thank you, Ryan, for being one of the few who step up and try to get things done, which I agree with 1000%. I want to be like Ryan here in New York. I want those guys to be advocates for you guys here in New York. And I have a lot of research to do. So I have a feeling I'll be getting in touch with you. I have you on Messenger. And if I have questions about who to contact and what direction, or if somebody says something in a certain way that I may not understand, I might need your consultation.
I am always available, ready to help.
I mean, like I said, if it is drone UAV related, and I have to stop saying drone, I really do, because it has to do with unmanned aircraft systems, everything from FPV to submersibles, etc. You know, it covers
You
that.
know, we're
and
really
also-
lucky with the submersibles. We don't have that many regulations.
Yet.
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 The only thing that I found so far was I got into it with a guy who owned a dock, and he said, you can't have that thing under my dock. And he called the police, and I called the Coast Guard. And calling the police did no good. The Coast Guard came out and explained to him, okay, so here's the rules for UAVs and docks. And this pertains to fishermen because fishermen started this. The dock owner owns the dock, and he owns the land that is directly under the dock. He does not own the water. So if you want to take your UAV under the dock, you're perfectly legal to do that. You do have to give right way to the boats, et cetera, just like giving right way to planes and stuff like that. But that's the only regulations that I've found so far.
Yep.
I have a ROV. And the fish like it. I don't know if you've seen any of my videos. The fish come up like a gang. They get right in its face and they go, who are you? What's going on?
Wait. Sean says, Geeks Gonna wait for the first report of a sub drone near miss a cruise ship.
Yeah, I am definitely for sure that ROV is not going to make it with a cruise ship. That prop will tear that thing up.
Listen, it's 6:58. We have to wind down. Pusa, we're going to crash Pusa Studios. Ryan Latourette.
Too.
What happened?
Val is live tonight too, isn't she?
Yes, we have to mention Val's life. I'm sorry, Val. Val's life comes on at 7 p.m.
But you guys are on a mission
comes
now.
on. What's up, Wash Build, NYC at FPV Flyer. You guys who did not watch this live stream and got here late, it may sound like Chinese to you, but we covered a lot of detail and issues that need to be addressed as far as drone advocacy, not just in New York, but drone advocacy in the United States. I'm not saying that we should push for a law to allow us to fly above 400 feet. All I'm saying is we should be allowed to fly in places without being harassed, shot at, or worrying about being tased and or arrested. Ryan, Paul, what are you mouthing, Paul? See, he just can't help himself.
Here we go.
Hello.
All right. He's not muted. He's having fun. Anyway, we got to do one more drop and we got to get out here. We appreciate everyone on the live stream. I think this was one of the best live streams we had in a while. Ryan, you need to pop back in. Wednesday nights with those guys comes on Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Herman's channel, Phantom Flight 101. We're there to support him. Pusa Studios comes on randomly. Support Val's Life, Canadian Drone Hub.
I'm just going to throw this out there. I think Ryan should start his own live show.
And whoever the hell else is out there saying free Paul.
Wife is on my case. It's date night. I got to get off of here.
Not a problem.
In the same here.
We appreciate you all. Let's get this drop in here.
All right.
Sunday nights with those guys was sponsored by
Those
guys. And we appreciate you guys ever so much. See you at the next live.